Whenever this gospel is read, I really enjoy watching the sideways glances women and children give to the men around them. The feeding of the 5,000 men, besides women and children, it says. I can't help that the context of the writers of the Gospels ignored women and children in the count. In some ways, it's impressive that women and children were mentioned at all, considering their context. It does show us that, by the modern standards at least, the count is already off a bit. Now, people believe what happened in various degrees, miracle or not, to their ability to accept them. Lots and lots of theories exist, some noting that big numbers like 5,000 are just round numbers, able to convey an impressive feat, a miracle of unfathomable size. It was 5 gajillion people, that kind of thing. And certainly we have many examples of writings contemporary with the Gospels which exaggerate in that very same way for effect. Another popular idea is that Jesus moved people, that they all saw what he was doing, and then they dug deep into their own pockets and their own bags, and they found morsels and brought them out, those things that were already there. And as much as I might like to think of Jesus as the ultimate king of the stewardship campaign, I'm not sure that I can personally dismiss the miracle. I can remark on one thing with sadness, however. It doesn't seem that miracles last. Those 5,000 people were probably hungry the next day. The manna from heaven eventually stopped. All those healed in today's Gospels and throughout the Gospels eventually died, including Lazarus himself, that one who was brought back from the dead. And when he died for the second time, no one knocked on the door and had him walking around again. It was permanent. For it was a raising from the dead, not a resurrection, but that's another sermon. Miracles, as amazing and generous and as loving as they are, don't seem to actually last. So why even bother talk about the miracles then, if they don't last? I mean, I'd sure like some fish, but I don't remember getting any from the 5,000. I don't have a fridge full of trout from the feeding of the 5,000, plus women and children. What's the point in even remembering any of this at all? The reasons I've come up with, ironically enough, corrupts some of what I've just said. Although the fish and loaves wouldn't have kept, the 12 baskets full weren't Tupperware after all. In some ways, the miracle did last. One of the reasons we talk about the miracle has to do with the why we talk about any great event or any great person. We know of the great things of the past, whether it be the lives of the saints or the founders of the country, because they have handed down something for us. Writings, ideas, church buildings, freedom, whatever it may be. And receiving these things like the good stewards we are thankful. Now, most of those who have handed down things to us weren't perfect. This isn't a perfect world, and we're not blind. We can see the flaws in what we've been given. That's true. Humans are awfully good at, in the face of abundance, finding where there is lack. But in the face of generosity, it's fairly natural to be grateful. I'm reminded of that old saying, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he eats forever. But I just bet if someone's really hungry, they're not going to scoff at the fish you might offer them. And not to diminish from that point, but none of us would either. When you look around inside this church or any church, your eye might fix upon this thing or that thing that you wish was a little different. Perhaps if you've been here long enough, you remember there's that water stain that keeps coming back. It hasn't been here for a while, but I bet you next time it rains, it's going to be back. Or I hate that carpet they put in that one room. That was a mistake from day one. I like the one before. It's so much better. Or maybe there's just one spot in the church that just seems too dark for you. or another one that's just too bright. So when you think on those things, does it remind you of generations ahead of us, behind us rather, that filling the space, carrying down and handing down their love for God in this church? Or do you think, those idiots, they didn't even know how to put a church together right in the first place? 100 years or so from now, those water stains will be back. The church hall will need to be redone. We'll have to maybe even redo this worship space again. And although all of that might be true, I don't think they'll see the idiocy of all of us. They'll see a faithful response to the continuing care of the parish, a people looking forward not just to next week or next year, but to the next few generations. A faithful response by a faithful people, searching out how to best do God's work in their own context. Now, this is where the metaphorical rubber hits the metaphorical road. The power of a thing is proportional to what it points to. The power of a thing is proportional to what it points to. When it points to things eternal, it's worth remembering. When it points to things everlasting, it's worth consideration and even meditation. Not just food for a day, but something beyond that. Jesus' feeding of the 5,000, plus women and children, points to the generosity of God. God's redemptive and abundant care for us is shown to us over and over again. It's pointed to in stories throughout the Bible and our history. We know the people were hungry. We're told it was evening, presumably past dinner time, an hour so late that the local restaurants had closed. But if everybody hurried, they could make a late seating across town. And Jesus took the mere happy meal left over from the disciples and provided enough for everyone. No, not enough, more, much more than enough. After everyone was full, they collected 12 baskets of leftovers. You almost want to turn and say to Jesus, "That was very wasteful, Jesus." At least you only fill 7 baskets when you do this again in chapter 15. Of course, it points out not the wastefulness of Jesus, but the overflowing abundance of God. Not only did everyone get to eat, but everyone was filled. And not only was everyone filled, but there was plenty to spare. Not only did God's very creation of us spring from generosity, but God cared for us. And not only did God care for us, but he sent his only Son to care for us. And not only did he send his only Son, but his Son would defeat death by first dying a human death for us. Back to the gospel. Did you notice the verbs in there, in that second half? Right after he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking, blessed, broke, and gave. It not only points to the continuous and abundant love God has for us, but it points specifically to that redeeming act in which we will partake in a few moments, and have partaken in for almost 2,000 years. Listen for those words in the service and notice the actions. Take, bless, break, give. Pointing to those things, general and specific, is more than enough reason why we continue to bother to talk about the miracles. That's what we've pointed to when we speak of the feeding of the 5,000, plus women and children. Speaking of feeding, did you know that we have fed 8,843? That's approximately the number of people that have been fed and received communion at this altar so far this year. I looked it up. Can you imagine how many it has been in our 41-year history? Now that is a sign of God's abundance. We also know that we are, all of us, interconnected. Usually we point out how interconnected we are in a negative way. We talk about it when we talk about pollution, overconsumption, ways that our actions affect other people. But it's positive too. That's the only way we can spread hope. gratitude, love. A true miracle is that God, that very personification of abundance, invites us into God's redemptive work. He says to the disciples, "You feed them." I'm sure that freaked them out, and maybe it freaks you out too. You do it. You feed them. And when the people say, "I don't know how to do that work, this is all we have," Jesus says, "Bring it to me. It's enough." So when we don't know what to do with the abundance we've been given, we turn and say, "God, help us with this." And then God, for his part, turned around and said, "Here, you give it to them." Jesus didn't hand out the food. The disciples did. So what is your abundance? What are the gifts you were given to glorify God in your own special calling? As individuals, as a parish, what are the particular needs of our greater community? I don't know. I only have an inkling. Something we'll discover together, what your gifts are and what the needs are. I do know some things, though. I know that if this miracle was really about food, then it didn't last. Because we don't last. Or to put it another way, to the extent that we don't last, miracles don't last. To the extent that we do, they do. We have a changed life, a life in Christ, pointing to something eternal. The power of a thing is proportional to what it points to. I know that there is need out there and in here, and I know there is abundance given to us. If we don't know what to do with our gifts, we give them to God, and God will turn around and show us how to use them. We've tapped in. When we partake of Jesus in this meal together, we become part of God's visionary work. When we receive Christ, we can give Christ. Now we open our eyes, see our place in the dream God has for humanity, and figure out what to do to be part of God's redemptive work in the world. This is the miracle, that God would have us, you and I, to help him change lives, to work the vision, to build the kingdom in his eternal name. We have the abundance. It's been given to us. You feed them, he said. You have received the gift of new life and been fed in the body and spirit. Now all of you, children and women, go show the world that the miracles truly last, and the men do it too.